All right, we're on day 7 of our Regents Review. You should have your homework out on your separate sheet of paper. So in our first one from the homework, we are changing by a percent, and we wanted the total downward distance. So percent, we want to think geometric. Total, we want to add them all up so it's a series. So from your reference sheet, use the geometric series formula. Your A1 was 32. Because it was not a percent increase or decrease, you're not adding it or subtracting it from 1. We're just putting that 0.80% in for R, and then N was 12. And when you type that in, we get 149 as the best choice. For the next one, recursive, we always tell A1 is first, so A1 is equal to 4. And then we have to figure out what the pattern was. And this pattern was a little tricky. There was 2 things going on. Each time we were doubling, and then it was 1 more than the double. So 9 is 1 more than double 4. 19 is 1 more than double 9, and so on. So there were 2 things that we had to put with our a sub n minus 1. We had to multiply it by 2 and add 1. Another way you could have had that written for that second part, you could have had an is equal an minus 1. You could do the times 2 here and then plus 1, and that would be fine as well. So they wanted us to find the 8th term, so we have to continue the pattern out. So I started with A5 is 79. So you've got to double and add 1 to get A6. And then to find A7, double your 159 and add 1. And then to get A8, double the 319 and add 1, so you get 639 in the end. This next one is a tricky question. So day 5, 225, 21 days late, 625. They tell us it's an arithmetic sequence. Well, arithmetic is like linear. So we want to think like a slope. And that will give us what our d value is. So here's our y minus our y, and think of it like x minus x. And when you do that, that eventually gives you 0.25 for your d value. Well, the easiest way to do this I showed over on the right here. So we know our d value is 0.25. We'll start at your A5 and just go back by 0.25 each time. So here's A4, A3, A2, and A1. So then our A1 is 1.25. And then they wanted us in simplest form, our equation. So this is normally how we can leave it. But since they wanted simplest form, you just have to distribute and combine like terms. So we get 0.25n plus 1. And then they wanted to know 60 days late. So we could just fill in the 60 for our equation, and we end up getting $16 is how much you would owe for 60 days late. Next one, we're starting with 1 cent. Notice our answers are in dollars, so we got to think of our original as $0.01. Each time it's tripling, so that's geometric. And because we want the total amount of money, we want to think geometric series. So your R is 3, 20th day, so that's our N. Fill that all in, and you end up getting choice 2 as your best answer there. For the next one, this is an example of our explicit formula. Well, this is our A1. This is our D that's being added on every time. We want recursive, so that automatically rules out those 2 because they don't have the A sub n minus 1. In reality, there's only one that has A sub n minus 1. So it's got to be that one. They tell us our A1, and we're adding on the 1,000 each time. Next one, write a recursive. So your first term was 6, then an equals a sub n minus 1. This one's not addition, clearly, so do a2 divided by a1 to get your r, and you can either write that as 3/2 or 1.5. So either of those options would be fine to show what you're multiplying by. All right, so we're going to start out in June 2018, number 6. And we'll want to have calculators out. So we want to know which function is even. Well, if functions are even, it should be symmetrical with the y-axis. And if functions are odd, you should be able to turn it upside down, and it should look the same. So actually, why don't we pause for a second, and on the back cover of your big booklet, why don't we turn there and have you write those two things, and we'll compile all little different things that we want to remember in one spot there, so you have it in one spot to study from. So write that even is symmetrical with the y-axis. Odd, you spin upside down and see if it looks the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you some time to graph all four of these and see which one is symmetrical with the y-axis. Now just a note about number 3, when it comes time to do the absolute value one, use the template next to the 9, and then absolute value for you guys, your absolute value might be in the second row, but the absolute value is that one. I think on your calculators it goes down to the second row, but that's where you would select the absolute value to put them in. So we're going to pause the video for 2 minutes to give you a chance to type all those in and see if you can find which one is symmetrical with the y-axis. So in other words, you could fold it over on the y-axis onto itself. All right, so the one that should have worked was the x squared minus 4. Should have looked like that. That's one where if you fold it over on the y-axis, it would fold over on itself. So we should have choice 2 for that one. We're going to go June 2018, number 13. And we'll give you a minute to read through the scenario there. So they tell us the profit function is the cost function subtracted from the revenue function. So P of X is equal to cost subtracted from revenue. So that would mean revenue comes first minus the cost function. And notice we want an equation to represent the cost function. So we want to get C of X by itself. So we're going to add C of X over. So we'll have P of X plus C of X equals R of X. Then we'll subtract P of X over. So we'll have C of X is our revenue function R of X minus P of X. And that guides us as to what we want to do. We're going to do R of X minus P of X to figure out which one is correct. So we'll take the R of X, which was minus 0.3x squared plus 150x minus P of X. And this is where people make the mistake. We want to subtract the entire P of X, so we've got to put it in parentheses. Well, this Minus is really a -1 in front, so it will distribute to all three terms. Once we distribute, we don't need the parentheses anymore. Distributing the -1 just switches all the signs. And then we'll combine our like terms. -0.3 and plus 0.5 will give us positive 0.2x squared. 150x minus 250x will give us a -100x. And then add the 300 on. So that's going to give us choice 1. So we're going to go June 2018, number 22. So we want to know which of these identities is true for x, y, and z. Well, what we're going to do is let's get numbers for x, y, and z. To get numbers for x, y, and z, we've got to store values for a, b, and c. So when we store, remember avoid 0, 1, and 2. So let's make a be 3, let's b be 4, and c be 5. And actually, the way I wrote that, it's backwards of how we have to put it in the calculator. 3 stored as A, 4 stored as B, and 5 stored as C. So we'll go over to our calculator, do a control doc to add a calculator page. So we'll do 3 stored as A, 4 stored as B, and 5 stored as, oops, forgot to put in the C, 5 stored as C. So then we want to type in the right side exactly as it looks. So we get numerical values for x, y, and z. So we're going to do in parentheses a plus b plus c all squared. Go like that. And when we hit enter, we get 144. So we know for us that x is going to equal 144. So what I'd like you to do is plug in the right side for both y and z to get our numbers for y and z. And we'll give you a minute to sub in both of those right in your calculator and just use them with the a, the b, and the c that we've stored. So we should get 50 for y. And we should get 47 for z. So now we just need to see which of these things is true. So we need to see for x we have 144. Is that equal to 50 minus 47? Well, 50 minus 47 is 3. That's not 144. So next we'll see is 144 equal to 50 plus 47. Oops, 47. 50 plus 47 is 40, or is 97. That's not 144, so that's gone. Next we'll have 144 equals 50 minus 2 times 47. Well, that's going to be 50 minus 94, which is going to be a negative number, so that's not 144. So hopefully the last one checks out. So 144, we want to know if it's 50 plus 2 times 47. That's 50 plus 94. And 50 plus 94 is 144. So that one does check out. So this is not one of our keywords that tells us to store, but we can use that storing feature to make life a little bit easier here. Next, we're going to go to June 2018, number 24. And we'll give you a minute to read through that. All right, so if we want to know an expression for the number of gift sets needed to hold 124 ounces, in general, what we want to do is we want to do the 124 and we want to divide it by the ounces in one of each set. So because we need the 124 on top, it's got to be choices 1 or 3. And what we just need to be careful of is we want consistency in units. This 124 is in ounces. So we need to make sure both of our terms in the bottom are in terms of ounces. Well, X is in ounces, but Y is a pounds. So X is okay here, but Y is not okay there, because that would be in a pounds. So it is going to be choice 3, and let's just talk through why 16Y is okay. If you had that Y is 3 pounds, there's 16 ounces in a pound. So therefore, they're doing 16 times the number of pounds to turn it into an ounces. So all those would be ounces now, so that's why choice 3 would be correct. So June 2018, 31 is where we'll go next. And we'll give you a minute to read through the question there. So the number one thing, if you see a question like this, and there's usually one question that's a crazy equation like this on the Regents, is don't freak out. The equation is crazy. It's something you'd never seen before. But what they're always testing on questions like this is if you can just read carefully and sub in where things need to be subbed in, and then you'll just have one thing missing in the problem, and that's what you're solving for. Well, notice below we want to find the monthly payment. Monthly payment's just M. Notice that's already by itself. So really all we need to do is just fill in everything else, and that's going to tell us M. So don't freak out if you see some equation you don't recognize. They're just testing to see if you can fill everything in correctly. So first off, P is the amount borrowed. Well, if they're purchasing a house for this much, and they're making a down payment of that much, the amount they're borrowing, they're telling us is the remainder. So we need to do 152,500 minus 15,250. And whatever that gives us, that'll be our P. That's the amount that we still have to borrow. So take a moment to subtract those two in your calculator. And we should get 137,250. So we're going to put that to start out in the P spot. And then we'll do a parenthesis. R is our annual interest rate. But when we put that in, we need to put it in as a decimal. So if you have 3.6%, move it over twice, and that's really 0.036. So I have 0.036 over 12, close parenthesis. Start a parenthesis. 1 plus. We've got R again, so that's 0.036 over 12, close parenthesis. And we've got to raise to the N. N is where lots of people make an error. N is the total number of monthly payments. Well, it's a 30-year mortgage. There's 12 months in each year. So we can do 30 times 12 to get 360. And that is our monthly payments, our N. So we're going to raise it to the 360. Then on the bottom, we'll have 1 plus our R, 0.036, over 12, raised to the 360, and then minus 1. So all we need to do now is punch this in, and we'll end up rounding it to the nearest dollar. So when you go to punch it in, start by doing a control divide to get the fraction template. We'll put in our 137250, and then parenthesis. Now we have a fraction, so do control divide to put in our fraction for the 0.036 over 12. Get out of the parenthesis, but still in the top of the fraction, do another parenthesis. We'll have 1 plus. We got another fraction, so we'll do control divide again. 0.036 over 12. Right arrow to get out of the parenthesis, and we got to raise that to the 360. We'll go down to the bottom now. Parenthesis, 1 plus. We need a fraction, so we'll do control divide. 0.036. Oops, I missed my point. 0.036 over 12. Right arrow to get out. We're raised to the 360. Right arrow to get out of the exponent. And then minus 1. And before you hit enter, just double check what you have on your calculator matches with what we had written on our paper exactly. And then go ahead and hit enter. And this gives us our monthly payment. And we want it rounded to the nearest dollar. So we have 62.00 and change. Or not 62, 624, sorry. So to the nearest dollar, this would just be $624. So again, don't freak out if you see an equation you haven't seen before. They're just testing to see if you can read carefully and fill in, and then solve for the one thing that they didn't give you. June 2018, number 36. And we'll give you a minute to read through the question. So notice we've got a trig equation here. On the regents, we want to be in radian mode. anytime we're working with a trig graph like that. So when we get to the calculator in a second, we'll show you how to make sure you're in radian mode. But the first part of this question wants average rate of change. When we see average rate of change, we want to think slope. They're telling us in the interval 1 to 2. So our first point is going to be 1 comma something. Our second point will be 2 comma something. We've just got to figure out what those somethings are by putting it into the calculator. So again, trig equations on the regents are going to be in radians. So if we go to our calculator, notice in a grasp or a calculator page, mine says DEG in the top right. If you click that DEG, you can switch it to RAD for radians. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our equation, we'll just sub in 1 for x. So we're going to have 12. We'll go to the trig button and select cos. We want to do control divide for a fraction. We need to put in pi over 3. So go to your pi button, put it over 3, hit the right arrow to get out of the fraction, times, for x we're putting in 1, get out of the parentheses, and then we wanted plus 8 on the end. And if we hit enter, we get 14. So that means our first point is 1 comma 14. Well, now we just want to sub in 2 for x. The easy way to do that, scroll up and highlight, hit enter, go over to where the 1 is and delete it out and switch it to a 2. And we get that as just 2. So this is the point 2 comma 2. So now we just have to do slope. Slope is y minus y over x minus x. So we're going to have maybe 14 to start, minus 2. If you started with 14, you got to start with 1 in the denominator, minus 2. This will give us 12 over negative 1. So in other words, negative 12. Now our units, they tell us right here, is centimeters per second. Now we want to know where h of t equals 0 on the interval from 1 to 5. This we're going to do graphically. So let's go over to a graphs page. We can do control doc and add a graphs page. Note in the top right we're in radians, which is what we want. And we're going to put our equation in, the original equation that has the x in it. So we'll do 12. We'll go to the trig button and hit cos. We need pi over 3 times x. So we'll do control divide to get a fraction. Pi over 3, hit a right arrow to get out of the fraction. We'll put in our x and get out of the parentheses by hitting the right arrow and then plus 8. And this gives us our graph there. Well, we wanted on the interval from 1 to 5, we want to know when it's equal to 0. Well, it's equaling 0 when it crosses the x-axis. So just based on our scale, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like it's crossing twice on 1 to 5. So we've got to do menu. When you're working on a graph, the most common thing you use is analyze graph. And we want to find the 0. So I'm going to find the one that's a little bit after 2 to start out. So lower bound, you need to select left of that. Now it asks for upper bound, select to the right of that, and it gives us our 0. Now if you ever need to see more decimal places, click the x value once and hit plus, and it'll show you more decimal places. Okay, so again, that's click the x value once, hit plus, and it'll show you more places. They wanted us to round to the nearest tenth. So for this one, we would have 2.2 to the nearest tenth. So we'll have t in this case, so t equals 2.2. Let's see if t had units. T is seconds, so we'll put seconds on there. And then we have to do it for the other one as well. We'll do menu, analyze graph 0. Lower bound, so select somewhere left of that 0. Upper bound, select somewhere right of it. And to the nearest tenth here, we have 3.8. So t equals 3.8 seconds. And you do have to show some work. So if you did it from a graph, just kind of draw what it looked like on our graph there. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because all they cared about was 1 to 5. And it just dipped down a little after 2 and came back up a little bit before 4. So we dip down a little after 2, come up a little before 4. And we just found each of those things. So that's where we're going to stop for today. Any time left in the period, you can start working on your homework. Have a great rest of your day.